that in just a second. So yes. At
this point in time, what do you suggest in terms of third-party tools that might alleviate the issue of working
I won't. There are a couple of them that are out there. Engage Publish is certainly one option. The enterprise forms from, I think it's a Flongmai, or however you pronounce that. Again, Cyrillic language. I'm not the guy. So anyway, yeah, that company, they've got a workflow solution. There are definitely some others out there. I know, just 2 or 3 of them off the top of my head. But certainly go to the marketplace. There are a number of them that are offered, a little bit of research, ask in the forums, and you'll get some good feedback on which ones people have liked and which ones they haven't, depending on what level of workflow you need or what type of workflow. Maybe it's just a simple way to give users permission to manage their own page, if that's like your level of workflow, sort of the MySpace model, right? So things like My Profile, which or actually I think now it's Active Profile from Active Modules. They just purchased that from DNN Fusion. So there are a number of different solutions depending on which particular flavor of workflow you need. Any other questions on workflow before we get started?
Well, not so much a workflow question, it's more like a content versioning question. I thought when the roadmap was discussed in November, one of the things that was sort of discussed as a possible piece of that was sort of staging and publishing, like staging versus production portals. Is that something that's anywhere in that?
Yes, and when we talk about some of these areas, one thing to keep in mind, especially for areas that we haven't actually built out yet, even for some of the areas that we had built out, even as Nick talked about in the skinning, is we're going to have an initial solution that sort of puts a stake in the ground, just like we did with localization, right? We said we need localization, let's do static localization. We know we can do that in a fixed amount of time, and we did that. So we're going to do the same thing with workflow. We're going to come out with an initial workflow solution that meets the needs of 80 to 90% of the market, and then it's going to be like our stake in the ground. And then some of the scenarios that we're looking to support include the ability for workflows to span multiple portals or multiple machines so that you can stage in one machine and kick off a workflow that will span from this machine to that machine or this portal to that portal, so that I could start a workflow to push content out to a separate machine, right? So to publish to another machine. So that's one of the ones, but I don't expect to see that in our 1.0 version of workflow. It's just, we've got to get some basics down before we're going to be able to support that model, but it is in our plans. Yes. Other questions?
Well, just real quick, what about the more general, I guess, so that even just the general option of pushing content from one portal to another, even as just like a one-button thing, as it happens whenever you say to without any checks and balances, is that all probably?
I would consider that all part of the same solution. When we start talking about spanning data across portals, there's a lot of other things that come into that. And so I would look at that as another type of workflow, in that you're publishing from one state to another, and that state just happens to be state 1 is this machine, state 2 is that machine, as opposed to visible, non-visible, right? So that's sort of how we're looking at that, and that may change as we get closer to what our final workflow solution looks like. That's what's our thinking right now. Other questions on workflow? So that basically wraps up where we were thinking, where we were at in OpenForce 07 in terms of the roadmap. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk about sort of where we're at today with DNN 5, okay? And what that really means in terms of what features we have already implemented. And at this point, I think for DNN 5, we're pretty much feature lockdown. There may be 1 or 2 more features that may come in 5.0. But for now, I think we're pretty much locked down. We're just trying to stabilize. We've done 5 betas at this point. We're on our 5th beta right now. We anticipate that we will have 1 more packaging, possibly 2 before we actually go wide to the public. And then we'll talk about that a little bit. So let me go ahead and I'm going to jump into a demo just here for a couple of quick minutes, and then you guys can ask us questions about certain features as we come to them, and Sean and Nick and Scott and I will do our best to answer. So let me see if I can. Oh, good. So if you're having problems hearing me, just let me know. The mic is a bit of a challenge, but we'll work around it, and I'll try to talk up a little bit here. So sure.
The first thing people should know is that we are in the process of selecting a new default skin for DotNetNuke that is in the techniques which Nick explained in his session previously. Those are going to be incorporated into the new default skin. It's going to be a lot more sexy. So,
and I'm really excited about the skinning side, because for me it's like, even within skinning, I view skinning that there are 2 sides to that, right? There's the CSS side, which is really sexy. You know, that's where I really want my designer spending his time. I really don't want my designer having to figure out how the HTML should go in order to make the CSS work, right? I mean, CSS Zen Garden is a perfect example of, they give you nice, clean, structured HTML, and they just let the designers go to town with some CSS. And I think Nick has done a great job in DNN 5 in showing us that we can do that in DNN. You know, we can put some nice, clean structure down, and then let the designers focus on the actual design, the CSS stuff, and get all the other cruft that's been in DNN out of the way, so that we're not starting from this really table-heavy sort of skin. And I'm really looking forward to that. Right. Yeah, that's the other part of DNN 5, and let's talk about some of the areas. So, like, one of the big things that we've committed to for a long, long time is we minimize breaking changes. Breaking changes only happen intentionally when we think that there are enough of them that it justifies having a breaking change. DNN 5 is not that release. So as far as we know, there are no breaking changes, and if there are, we need to hear about them, and we'll talk about the opportunity to do that. So if there are, we will fix them, because there shouldn't be breaking changes. We want all the modules to work, we want all the skins to continue to work, and then we'll provide opportunities for new skins and new modules to take advantage of the new features. So let's talk a little bit about what some of those new features are. So using the standard skin, we've done an install. I've got a bug that we noted here. So ignore that fact that I'm in an installed directory. It's a bug that we've got to resolve in beta 5. So we'll go ahead and log in, and you really won't see a whole lot that has changed on the page. So let's talk about some of the things that Sean has already mentioned and that Scott has already mentioned. And that is the ability to do permissions, right, and to change around our host and admin menu. So if I go into my admin menu, so if I go in, let's say I go into site settings page, and I decide after the page loads that I want to give permission to site settings to maybe some junior administrators, right? Now, I can go into settings now, right, which you never used to be able to do this. When you were on the admin menus or the host menus, you never had access to change the settings, right? You never had access to delete the page. But now, you can see that for my page settings, I can actually go in and assign permissions and give different groups or different users permission to do things. So one of the